Let us start with the preliminary homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Let us now pay respect to the triple gem. Arahang sama sambuddho bhagava buddhang bhagavantang abhivademi. Swakato bhagavata dhammo dhammang namasami. Supatipano bhagavato sawaka sangho sanghang namami. Let us now go for the refuge to the triple gem. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. We will now chant the observance of the 5 precepts. Panatipata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu micacara veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Musawada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Surameraya majapamadatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Let us recollect the sublime qualities of the Buddha. Iti piso bhagava arahang sama sambuddho vijacarana sampano sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati satta dewa manusanang buddho bhagavati. Let us recollect the sublime qualities of Dhamma. Swakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko ehipasiko openaiko pacatang veditabo vinyuhiti. Let us now recollect the sublime qualities of Sangha. Supatipano bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Ujjupatipano bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Nyāyapatipano bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Samicipatipano bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Yadidang cattari purisa yugani atta purisa pugala esa bhagavato sāvaka sangho. Ahuneyo pahuneyo dakineyo anjali karaniyo anuttara punyaketa lokasati. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
With your eyes closed, bring your attention first of all to your body sitting here. And please relax your body. How do you relax your body? By being mindful of your body and being kind to it. What do I mean? We can start with your legs. Ask your legs. Legs, how do you feel right now? And keep asking that question until you get an answer. Just imagining your legs to be like separate living beings. When you ask a question of your legs with respect, sometimes my legs tell me that they need to be adjusted, moved. I listen, which means the mindfulness is starting to work. It's not just being aware, it's getting to know. And the kindness means that I change my posture slightly. I often spend a long time with my body when I'm meditating, at the very beginning, to make sure it's all fine. But we've only got a few minutes, so then go to your bottom, your buttocks. I say that because sometimes people's buttocks get sore sitting on a cushion or on a chair. So we want to relax to the max, so we're comfortable. It's not just indulgence. This is simple kindness to your own body. And then move up to your back. Just imagining your back to need a big stretch. The reason I do that, I've just been living in forests all my life, and even in Australia, you see even kangaroos do stretching exercises. These are native wild kangaroos. So I do a big stretch of my body at the beginning and just feeling all these chemicals going into my body, just painkillers, immune enhancers, until my back, it feels really great. And then I relax the muscles of my shoulders. Spend some time on my shoulders because they often have a lot of aches on them. I imagine those muscles being pulled apart by two invisible demons, actually four, two on each side. And I let go. Let go of stretching. Let go of stress. By allowing those muscles just to be. And they respond. My awareness of those muscles, you can relax them almost at any time. Oh, that's great. And then I look at my hands. Where are the hands supposed to be? It doesn't really matter. You put your hands in a place which you feel to be comfortable. And ask your hands, like your hands were separate entities from you. Hands, how do you feel? Do you need to be moved? And then you can move back up to your shoulders and neck to make sure that the head is well balanced on top of the neck. Not too far to the left, not too far to the right, not too far forward or too far back. Nicely balanced. And even in your throat, if you have any tickly sensation like I have now, I do have allergies. It's part of what I inherited from my father, who had asthma. Just be kind to your throat. Find ways of relaxing it. And then move up to your face. In your face there's many muscles which stretch, scrunch up because of your emotions. And by relaxing the muscles on your face, you can also relax some of the emotions. So I feel the muscles around my eyes. And I loosen them all. And around my mouth too. And once I've just done a quick scan of my body, I next become aware of my body just as one unit, just one whole. The whole purpose is to be aware and kind enough to relax everything. Because I've been doing this for years, I notice that when I deliberately relax my body with mindfulness and kindness, I get this delightful feeling. The delight of having a body which is much more at peace than usual. It's the same delight which people pay a lot of money for, to go to some beach in Bali on a recliner, or to have a body massage, or to go in a hot tub. I do that just automatically, mindful and kind. And I enjoy that delightful feeling. Delight is part of meditation. I'll just stay there for a few seconds. And then we go deeper inside to our mind. How peaceful are you, or how agitated are you? There's something which I hope you've heard me teach about the peaceometer, like a thermometer, speedometer. How peaceful are you? Given a number from 1 to 10. 10 is agitated, 1 is very peaceful. What makes that reading go up to more disturbance? What makes that reading go down to more peace? For any one of you who wants to know where this fits in, this is almost third Satipatthana. What causes disturbance to the mind? What stops a disturbance? And you're putting your awareness on peace, peace of mind. You don't think peace, you experience peace. And if those of you who like to watch your breathing, just watch your breath, experiencing it, but don't sacrifice peace. And be kind to this moment, opening the door of your heart to whatever you're experiencing right now. And experiencing it. Don't think about it. Go deeper inside in the thoughts, to the silence which exists in the present moment, just here, relaxing, making no plans, making no judgments. Grant to yourself these moments of peace. You deserve them. How do you feel now? What's it like in your mind? Your emotional world? How much peace can you feel? And how relaxed is your body? And how joyful does it feel? The time is up now. Instead of ringing the gong, I just ask you to slowly open your eyes. And come out from your meditation. And smile. Yeah. Thank you.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Welcome to Sunday service. Today, we're very fortunate to have Dr. Ho Yu-Chin. We'll be speaking on the topic, a spiritual cultivation through a sustainable lifestyle. Dr. Ho Yu-Chin is a consultant otolaryngologist at Tan Tock Seng Hospital. He is a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of England and the Academy of Medicine, Singapore, and holds a Master of Medical Education from the University of Warwick. His clinical and research interests are in the management of chronic ear diseases, hearing and balance disorders. Dr. Ho endeavors towards a humanistic practice of clinical medicine. He volunteers with Tzu Chi International Medical Association. Dr. Ho believes in empowering patients with robust knowledge of their health conditions by giving free public talks regularly. Let's welcome Dr. Ho.
Hi, very good morning to all my Dhamma brothers and sisters. I hope you are all well during this challenging period. My name is Yu Chin, and I would like to sincerely thank Buddhist Fellowship and the organizing committee for once again inviting me to share on this Sunday morning. I suppose whenever I get asked, I would say I have nothing else to talk about. I don't know if I have a new topic. So, but I suppose since I have to give the sharing today, I will share on a topic that is very close to my heart. And I think for those of you who know me and who have listened to me before, you will know what that is. It's about protecting the earth. Some of my friends call me an eco warrior, but I tell them that I'm a Buddhist. I cannot be a warrior. I'm more of an eco worrier. I worry about the state of our earth, our environment. So I think that would probably describe me, an eco worrier. But I don't know how many of you would perhaps share the same concern and worries as me. But anyway, let me share some of my thoughts. So the title of my sharing today is Spiritual Cultivation through a Sustainable Lifestyle. So first of all, let's ask ourselves, what is sustainable lifestyle, right? I suppose if you look at the term sustain life, we are alive, right? That's why we are here in this session together. How do we sustain our life? If we reflect a little bit deeper, right, you will soon realize that to stay alive, we need to consume energy. So as human beings, in fact, for any living beings, whether they are animals or plants, they are all consuming energy to stay alive. But beyond living things consuming energy, everything that we do consumes energy as well. For example, the fact that you could listen to me now, you need to be either at Buddhist Fellowship, so the lights are on, the aircon is running, the projector is running, right? And you would have had to consume energy to make your way to Buddhist Fellowship. For those of you who are at home, well, I'm sure you're sitting in front of your computer screen, maybe your phone, and of course that is consuming energy. And then the energy to run the internet, the Wi-Fi, right? So essentially, we all need energy to stay alive, right? I mean, there's no doubting this fact. But it also means that by us staying alive, we are adding to the carbon footprint of the world, right? And besides consuming energy, we generate waste, right? I don't think you need me to describe what waste human beings or animals produce, but we all produce waste, right? But to create like electricity, right, for us to run our lives, there's waste as well, right? CO2. So I think the important point is that just being alive means we are impacting the world around us. I think it's quite a profound thought, right? Because you may think, oh, I'm not contributing anything to global warming and all that, nothing to do with me. But actually, we cannot run away from this. We are all contributing. It's just a case of Are we contributing more or less? And then besides thinking about just impacting the world around us, we can look a little bit closer to ourselves. Can we also sustain a life or live a life that is sustainable for our body and health? Right? Can we lead a life that's actually healthy, that we don't overconsume, we don't under-consume, right? Because if you think about it, sustainable lifestyle is also us sustaining our body so that we can live a long, healthy life, right? So another thing to think about, it's not just about caring for the world, it's caring for ourselves as well. And it's probably true that in the developed world, there is more health problems from overconsumption, right? We eat too much. And it's the opposite in the developing world, the countries that are underdeveloped, right? There is the other opposite, malnutrition, underconsumption. So different parts of the world, they have different problems, different health problems, right? And then the next question is, can we live a life that is wholesome and healthy for us and others? Can we live a life that has minimal harm for us and others, right? Because we should always think about what good, can come about from our action, and can we minimize any harm from our actions? And then can we live a life that has minimal impact on nature and its resources? And the last question is, can living sustainably be a form of spiritual cultivation? If you're not sure, I will just share my own experience that the answer is a definite yes. That for many years in my life now, this thing about living sustainably is been a core part of my life. And I find that it also helps me develop as a human being, help me develop as a Buddhist. And actually, it's not that difficult, right? It's about living a simple life, eat simple, eat healthy, right? Consume less, waste less, and that's it. So that's the end of my sharing. Thank you for your attention. Okay, that's the summary. But essentially, that is my messaging, right? For those of you who like to find out more, I will share more because I think when you got something positive that you have benefited from, and I think, yeah, it's only right that I share. So let's go on a bit deeper, right? Let's talk about sustainable lifestyle in terms of like what our personal development, right? If you think about it, if we lead a simpler life, right, it means that we live with less. And does that mean that we have less greed and less attachment then? Isn't that what we are all striving to do, right? The more things you have, actually, the more worries you have, right? You're worried about losing it. That's my point, right? Having less also means having less worry, right? More possession, more material things, and then you're constantly worried. Am I going to lose it? Is somebody going to steal it? Is it going to spoil? And then having less, I suppose, it means it's easier to let go of material things, right? Not the easiest, but I'm sure we are all in some ways striving to let go. And maybe for things that we cannot let go yet, I'm guilty, right? It helps us appreciate what we already have. It helps us develop this sense of blessings and gratitude, right? For whatever that we own, if we can use it for as long as possible, till the end of its life, useful life, you tend to appreciate it more rather than having this culture of buying a new thing every year, throw away culture. Then you almost take everything for granted, right? Because I have money, I can just buy something new, even though the old thing is still usable, right? I want to have the latest, the most fashionable. And then I suppose an important reflection for myself, and I'm sure many of you may have had this reflection yourself, is to appreciate that this habit that many of us have, and I still have it sometimes, we like to buy new things, the joy of getting something new, a new car, right? I suppose in Singapore, sometimes no choice, right? Your COE is only for 10 years, almost like you're forced to get a new car after 10 years. So sometimes can't be helped. Of course, you also have the option of renewing the COE. But I'm sure many of you would have realized as well the happiness that comes from buying or getting something new is impermanent, right? So it's a good reflection. So once you come to realize that actually all this happiness from having new things is impermanent, then can we stop craving having to get new things all the time? Just can we carry on using whatever we have until they really stop working, right? Then if you look at sustainable lifestyle, can it be about us developing compassion and kindness? I would say definitely, if you reflect a bit deeper. Now, would anyone here not say that they don't aspire to want to live to live a long, healthy, happy life, right? I'm not just saying a long life, right? Most of you will agree there's no point having a long life if you're not happy, you're not healthy, right? But if you can have both health, physical and mental, and the long life is great, right? Why is that great? Because if you think about it, right, every one of us have benefited so much from the generations before us, the people who have been before us, our parents, our teachers. Singapore, it has been built through the sweat and blood of the previous generation, the foreign workers and all that, right? And being able to live a long life actually gives us more time to develop ourselves and also to give back to society, right? And if we live healthily, it reduces the chance of us being a burden to others. And I'm sure everyone will agree that I don't want to live a long life and to be a burden to my family or to society, right? And so I'm sure we realize that what we do impact others directly and indirectly. It's the indirectly part that we often may not always see straight away, right? And I think I would like all of us to reflect on this next statement, right? That generally, richer communities, meaning the people living in the richer countries, right? They consume much, much more resources. And that includes us, right? The lucky people in Singapore, right? With one of the highest GDP per capita in the world. We fall into this category. We will fall into the group of people in the world that, on the whole, we overconsume. And yet, all the negative effect, right, of the overconsumption, the impact of it on the environment, is actually the poorest people in the world who have to suffer the ill effect. So if you think about it, there is actually a lot of injustice in the world. And I think for me, being a Buddhist, I think it would be very selfish of me now that I know, in fact, I knew about this for many years already, to say that, oh, I don't care. I'm just going to continue to overconsume. Knowing that my overconsumption for my own happiness, for my own comfort, means that it adds to the suffering of the poorest in the world. And it's something that means a lot to me, realizing this fact. And it's one of the very powerful things that have motivated me to adopt a lifestyle that is as sustainable as possible. And this is what I'm hoping to share today, right? So I would argue that leading a sustainable lifestyle is a powerful way for us to demonstrate that we care, not just for ourselves, our family, our loved ones, people in Singapore, but it's to care for people around the world. It's to care for all living beings, right? And how we can minimize harm to them. I think this is something quite profound, and I hope everyone can reflect on this reality. I got some of these interesting statistics recently. The one on the left, right, is about fossil fuel, right? Things like coal, gas, petrol, what we have to burn, right, to get energy, electricity. In terms of CO2 emissions per square kilometer by country, in terms of tons of CO2, unfortunately, Singapore comes up number one in the world, right? This is perhaps one area that we shouldn't be too proud that we are number one in the world. But in some ways, it can't be helped, right? We are a small country, dense population. Perhaps the chart on the right is a bit of a fairer representation of what is our contribution to global warming, right? Through our CO2 production, right? And so this is the per capita. That means on average, each of us, how much CO2, how much are we producing per year, right? Tons of CO2. And suppose if you look at this, Singapore is not the worst culprit, places like Qatar and Trinidad and Tobago, I'm quite intrigued that they appear so high up. But generally, they are the oil producing countries like Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, Saudi Arabia, that are the biggest culprits, right? And Australia is pretty high up because a lot of Australia's income is from the export of minerals, right? And coal, right? They are, I think, either the largest or second largest coal producer and exporter in the world, right? Then you can see that all the top emitters of CO2 are the developed countries, right? The countries that have petrol, coal. And so I suppose that is part of their excuse, right? But then if you say Singapore, we are not doing that badly. But then if you ask yourself, actually, we are not an oil producing country. We don't produce coal, and yet our level is still quite high. And we're higher than places like Germany, right? Netherlands, Japan, higher than our nearest neighbor, Malaysia, and higher than China, right? But of course, it's anticipated that China, with the rising prosperity and rising consumption, they will probably move up the league table over the years, right? So something to reflect on, why are we consuming so much energy, right? And contributing so much to CO2 emissions? I think there are many reasons, but it's interesting that those temperate countries, right, places like Germany, Netherlands, where you would have thought they need to consume a lot of energy to keep warm in winter, right? So despite them having to consume a lot of energy, they are doing better than Singapore. Is it because in Singapore, we are actually consuming a lot of energy to keep cooler, right? Because of our temperature, climate, I think that's one of the reasons, right? And I suppose because we don't have any natural resources, right? So just we have to consume a lot of energy just to keep the country running. Anyway, in terms of ranking in the world, Singapore is 27th lah. So again, something not to be so proud of. I think it'd be nicer if it could be further down the ranking, right? This is one of those rankings where you don't want to be the top lah, right? Yeah, not something to be proud of. And then, not surprisingly, the poorer countries in the world, right? And if you look at the GDP, they tend to be lower down. Places like Philippines, right? Our neighbor as well, 107th in the world. Places like India, 102. Of course, their total CO2 emission will be higher than Singapore, but you have to be fair, right? It's per capita, the amount of CO2 that the country generates versus the number of people. Indonesia, Thailand, they are all further down the chart, okay? So I like to now pose this question, right? What's the most important inheritance we can leave for our children and our grandchildren? And I'm going to apologize, but I'm going to be a little bit cheeky here. But I think for most of you, right, if you are consider yourself a true Buddhist, I'm sure you believe in the concept of rebirth. So if I were to ask you, what would you like to be rebirthed as? I'm sure a large number of you would say as a human being. Again, right? Because we know that in the human realm, we actually have a great potential to do both good and evil to cultivate. And we know that for the Buddhas, right, the some Buddhas, their final rebirth is always in the human realm, right? Because it's a realm that has good and bad, right? But also many opportunities to do good. So if you were to think, well, I would like when it's my time to leave this world, right? And of course, if you have cultivated sufficiently, you could attain the state of Nibbana, not having to be reborn. Great. I know I'm not there yet. Not sure how many of you in the audience this point say, yeah, I won't be reborn. or even dare to say, well, am I ready not to be reborn again? I don't know. Anyway, just food for thought. But let's say for those of you who would like to be reborn as a human being, then you have to ask this legacy that we leave to our children and our grandchildren, right? Great grandchildren. Actually, it's a legacy that we are leaving to ourselves as well in our next life. If we come back as a human being, or worse still, if we come back as not a human being, but as an animal back to this earth, what sort of world do we want to see when we come back the next time? A world that is better than now, or a world that's going to be worse, right? I think there are actually many reasons to be worried that the world in the future is going to be worse than it is now for a lot of reasons. Let's look at the thing that is on our mind, right? This COVID-19. Will there be future pandemics? Definitely. Because of the way humans are living our lives, right? Population growth, we are cutting down the forests. There is less and less separation between the wildlife and human beings. And a lot of studies have shown that the more interaction humans have with wild animals, the higher the chance that there's going to be another virus that is going to cross the species barrier. It's not the question of if the next COVID is going to happen. It's a question of when it's going to happen. We know that COVID-19 is called COVID-19 because it started in 2019. I'm sure we'll get things under control. At some point, COVID will become an endemic virus, be like influenza. But the next COVID, is it going to be COVID-30, right? In less than 10 years, are we going to see the next pandemic? Or is it going to be hopefully COVID-99? It'll be a long time to come, right? But something for us to reflect on. But a lot of scientists are already making the prediction that if human beings, we do not change our behavior, the next pandemic will come sooner rather than later. In fact, if you look at all the other viral illnesses that has happened, SARS, the Nipah virus, H1N1, they all came from animals and they crossed the species barrier into human beings. So every one of these virus that has caused a pandemic, big or small, has come from animals, right? So this is something we need to seriously ponder about. Then the other thing I think I've already mentioned, climate emergency. I wouldn't even use the word climate change because now the World Health Organization, United Nations, they're all calling it the climate emergency. It is an emergency now. Global warming, extreme weather patterns. Some parts of the world, the winters are getting more extreme. You may say, hey, global warming, how come the winter is getting colder? It's about the average temperature around the world, right? It's getting hotter. But it doesn't mean the winter will get milder. In fact, it's the opposite. The winters get colder, severe snowstorm. Places that are dry and hot becomes even hotter. Drought become, the places prone to drought will be even drier. The drought will be, crops will be devastated. The areas prone to flooding will get even more extreme floods. Places prone to hurricane and typhoons will get even more extreme weather conditions. I'm not going to go into the science of why this would happen, but you just have to Google and it's all well explained why climate change will cause the weather to be more extreme. And there will be more ice melting, more glacier melting, and the sea level is going to rise, right? Deforestation, population growth, but also our need to have more agriculture to produce food, especially meat, right? Pollution, plastic and chemical contamination. And Singapore is extremely vulnerable to all the above, right? And it's a very sobering thought, but we cannot say that, well, nothing to do with us. It's always very sad sometimes when I talk to people and say, hey, are you not worried about global warming? Sometimes the answer is, if it gets hotter, I just turn on the aircon more, right? Turn the temperature down. I'm not sure if they're joking when they say that. I hope they are. But, the average sort of my friend, they say, we have aircon. I mean, we can afford, even if electricity becomes expensive, I think I can afford it. it's sort of like thinking that we can pay our way out of global warming because we are a rich country, but that is a real fallacy. Okay, if you look around us, pollutions, these are photos that we have all seen in the media, right? The smoke, the dirty water, rubbish in the sea, rubbish on land, flooding, often in poor countries, but the photo at the bottom in the center, that is Singapore, so we're not immune to it, right? But of course, we can say, oh, Bukit Timah area flood, we forget about it quickly, but when it's places like Bangladesh, Philippines, people lose their homes, people lose their livelihood, people lose their lives, right? So the impact is always worse on the poorer communities, right? Extreme winter, extreme typhoon, right? Sometimes we get a bit numb, right? One natural disaster after another, and you just shrug, whoa, thank goodness we live in Singapore, we are quite immune. I don't think we should be too smart because Singapore is one of the lowest lying countries in the world, right? The average height in Singapore above sea level is not that high. And I think the Singapore government is very concerned about rising sea levels, right? Pollution, plastic, how animals, the wildlife suffer, right? Then the amount of plastic in our water, in our air. Even you buy bottled water, well, it's bottled in plastic anyway, but even tap water, it's everywhere. And then, of course, you think about plastic bags. I think, again, sometimes we get a bit fed up, right? A bit numb and say, oh no, another one of these gloomy stories about, right? But sometimes it's worth reflecting, how long plastic will be with us, right? It takes hundreds of years. This would be rebirth number, I don't know, number 5, number 6. I don't know how many, the plastic that you throw away now, if it gets into the sea, right? When you come back 6 rebirths from now, the plastic will still be around. So if you think about it, sorry, I just want to inject a bit of humor, but I think just to get us to reflect, what the real implications are. And then I got this chart from the internet recently, and I thought it's quite interesting, right? The chart showing the green it shows the population of the world, and the other chart, the one in purple, right, just shows the percentage of population increase. So I suppose the good news is that by 2100, it's estimated that the population of the world will start to plateau because population growth rate would have reduced to the level where it will plateau and it's likely to drop the entire world population. But that's still a long way away. And for the next 80 years or so, the population is expected to grow. And it was interesting as well that I found this fact that between the year 10,000 BC, that's a long time ago, right? 10,000 BC, and the year 1700, so that's 11,700 years, right? There was hardly any population growth in the world. It's about 600 million people in that 11,000 years. I think that was a time when there was a lot of war, there was famine, natural disasters. So I think nature has a good way of keeping population growth in check, right? It's if you just leave it to nature, the population of human beings was around 600 million. But then from the 1700 onwards, right, especially 1800 with the Industrial Revolution. So from 600 million, we hit 1 billion. It took us 100 years to add another 400 million to hit 1 billion people. Then it took a shorter time to get the next billion, right? By 1928, you had 2 billion people. And then 2.5 by 1950. I think this era with the World War and all that, that probably slow it down. And then after that, look at the population growth, right? And then right now we are at about 7 point something billion people and soon to hit 8 billion. So more of us around, and correspondingly, the amount of energy, right? We know that we need energy to stay alive, have gone up, and this just shows the source of energy, right? From solid fuel will be burning of coal, wood, liquid fuel will be petrol, diesel, gas would be methane gas. And then it shows that cement production, interestingly, is a big contribution of CO2. So construction, right? To build our houses, infrastructure, unfortunately, that has a big contribution to CO2. And then for anyone who denies climate change, or they say it's nothing to do with human activity, I mean, the science is very strong. This chart, the line in red shows the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere, right? It's now reached above 400 parts per million. And the white line up and down, it shows the global temperature. So definitely the rising global temperature, it tracks the rise in the CO2, right? So, and the rise in the CO2, that is due to human activity, the size of the population, and the amount of energy we consume and the amount of waste that we produce. So this is from the World Health Organization's Climate Change and Health. This is the latest document. I'll just read out some of it for you. Climate change affects the social and environmental determinants of health: clean air, safe drinking water, sufficient food, and secure shelter. Between 2030 and 2050, climate change is expected to cause approximately 250,000 additional deaths per year. 250,000 people will die every year, right? From malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, and heat stress from climate change. And the direct damage caused to healthcare, and this it says, excluding costs in health determining factors such as agriculture and water and sanitation, is estimated to be between 2 to 4 billion US dollars per year. Billion, not million, right? And areas with weak health infrastructure, so again, mostly in developing countries, will be the least able to cope without assistance to prepare and respond. Back to my earlier point, we consume, the poor people will suffer, right? Reducing emissions of greenhouse gases through better transport, food, and energy use choices can result in improved health, particularly through reduced air pollution. So actually, this may be news to you, right? But climate change is a public health issue, right? And this one is just a graph showing what it all means, And the shocking thing is, just now I said 250,000 people per year will die from effect of climate change, but another 7 million people will die from air pollution. And where do you think the air pollution comes from? It's from all the power plants burning fuel, coal especially, right? It's all the pollution from cars, right? Exhaust and all that. 7 million people will die. So this concept of socially engaged Buddhism, right? As Buddhists, we have to ask ourselves, do we always just focus on our self-development, cultivate inwardly? That is no doubt very important, right? Cultivate the mind, right? But do we sometimes need to look beyond, this inwards looking way of practicing? Because day to day, like it or not, right? Especially if you're lay people, right? And you still hold a job and all that, you got to interact with others and the wider world. Then do we as lay Buddhists need to engage in issues that affects our lives and the lives of other people? Right? Can we use our engagement with others to help develop ourselves? Now that's the interesting thing. As we engage with others, can we develop? And I would say definitely yes. And why should I care? You may say, right? It's not my problem. Really? Right? Is it something for the next generation to worry about? Whose problem is it? I'm only one person, right? Whatever changes I make will not make a difference. Unfortunately, if every one of us think like that, right, then nobody is going to make a difference, right? But if everyone can actually do their part, collectively, it adds up to a lot, right? And we can change the world one person at a time. It's too difficult. It's too inconvenient. Can't be asked, right? But I would argue that if we consider ourselves Buddhists and Dhamma practitioners, we should say that I should care more for the world and for others and not just focus on myself because I'm a Buddhist. I'm a Dhamma practitioner. So Buddhist perspective, as I've said, I care because I'm a Buddhist and because I want to make a difference. It's about understanding the collective karma of mankind. And I will argue that looking after the environment means putting the Dhamma into practice. It's about Buddhism in action. Preserving nature helps preserve the environment that are conducive to our spiritual practice. Don't we like to the idea of actually going for retreats, right? Meditation retreats. Where are these retreats? Not in some busy city area, right? It's always out where there's nature, trees, right? It's about the forest, the clean air, the moderate temperature that is conducive for practice. And I would argue the Buddha never called himself an environmentalist, but I would say that he is one of the greatest environmentalists ever. Because if you look at the Buddha and his Sangha, right, the monastics, at least those in the very early time, during his time, they actually led lives that had almost zero impact, i.e. a zero carbon footprint on the environment. They live amongst nature, right? They don't live in the urban areas. They want to be away in the forest. They led very simple lives. They had only their robes and their arms bow as their only possession, nothing else, right? They consume enough nourishment and medicine just to stay alive, right? They eat simple food as offered by the lay people, and they have no wastage. And I understand in the early days, whatever cloth they could find, they just dyed it. They didn't even use new cloth to use as their robes, right? So, and because they're all shaven, there's no need to buy shampoo, conditioner, hair gel. They didn't need any toiletries, right? So if you think about it, the Buddha and his monastics, the monks and nuns, if the rest of us can follow their lifestyle, right? Imagine the impact on the CO2 emission in the world, right? What about Buddhism and nature, right? I'm sure we all realize that all sentient beings, they are interrelated and interdependent, right? And one of the fundamental principles of karmic laws is that, we are all interdependent on each other. And also one of the core values of Buddhist practice is ahimsa, right? Which means it's a Sanskrit word. It's the principles of non-harm and the respect for all sentient lives. And one thing that differentiates the Buddha Dhamma from many other religions is that it's fundamentally ecocentric. It means versus anthropocentric. Anthropocentric means it puts man in the center of everything. Man is important. In fact, in Buddhism, man is not important, right? The man is just part of the ecosystem. We are no more important than all the other human beings. And if you look at Buddhist philosophy, it has that philosophy. Mankind itself is not that important. Whereas there are some religions who believe that man is important and everything else in the world is created for man to consume and to use, right? Animals have been created for man to eat, for example, right? The petrol, the coals have been created for man to burn as fuel. So everything is about man have the right to consume what was created for him. But I think as Buddhists, we don't see it that way, right? We are just part of nature. And in the Buddha Dhamma, I would argue that humans are seen as part of an integral part of nature, and they are not in a position of dominance. In fact, I think the Buddha would often tell us that we are subjected to the natural laws of the universe as well, right? We are no different. The notion that nature and other living beings exist for the benefit and exploitation by human beings actually run counters to Buddhist teachings. And when nature suffers, human beings suffer too alongside. So the main aim of Buddhist practice is to end suffering and to gain happiness for ourselves and others. This can never be achieved through the pursuit of power and materialistic gains. Acceptance of the law of the universe, including the law of karma and the law of interdependence, is important. And the peaceful and happy coexistence with Mother Nature and all sentient beings is necessary. Okay, what can we find in the suttas, right? In the Kuttadanta Sutta, it says that the 10 duties of the king. or we can replace that with the government for today. It points out that it is a responsibility of the government to take active measures to provide protection to flora and fauna. Dhammapada verse 49, Pupavaga points out that one should live in the environment without causing any harm to it. It states, as a bee that gathers honey from a flower and departs from it without injuring the flower or its color of its fragrance, the sage goes on his arms round in the village. The flower, moreover, ensures the continuity of the species, and the bee, in taking pollen, does not interfere with nature's design. One of the most respected Sangha members alive, Buddhadasa Bhikkhu, this is what he said, right? To quote him, the entire cosmos is a cooperative. The sun, the moon, and the stars live together as a cooperative. The same is true for humans and animals, trees and the earth. When we realize that the world is a mutual, interdependent, cooperative enterprise, then we can build a noble environment. But of course, there are obstacles to environmental protection, right? So the question then is, can we make it an active part of our Buddhist life? It's about always asking what I do as a Buddhist rather than what I don't do, right? It's about the positive precepts rather than the negative precepts. Mindfulness of our actions and conduct is very much needed to be aware all the time. Effort is needed. There will be some inconvenience. We may be perhaps less comfortable. When we turn the aircon temperature up a bit, we feel a little bit warmer, not so cold. But hopefully, if enough of us do it together, it means that those in the hottest part of the world with no aircon, things will be less hot for them, right? In terms of waste generation, right, I think I've already said that every single thing we buy or acquire will either be nourishment, right? Food, drinks that we consume, or necessities or wants in our daily lives, all sorts of things, right? And everything that is produced requires the use of natural resources. Hence, as I said earlier, consumption has an impact on the environment. So the real problem with our modern life is overconsumption and the amount of waste generated. And that's because we are used to the life of convenience, right? We have a buy and throw culture. We buy the food from the supermarket, whatever waste goes down this rubbish chute, right? And we don't think about what happens to the rubbish afterwards, unfortunately. Many countries in the world, they have to use a lot of land to bury the rubbish. Of course, Singapore, we don't have land, right? So what happens to the rubbish in Singapore? We burn it, right? In Tuas. And now what do? We dump the solid matter that remains into landfill, right? Trying to create enlarged Semakau Island, right? And I think the government is worried that Semakau would probably become full much sooner than originally planned because of our level of consumption. This chart is quite interesting, right? It says that on average, each of us in Singapore, we produce nearly 1,400 kilograms of rubbish, of waste per year. I'm nearly 70 kilos, so that's 20 times my body weight of waste per year, right? And of which only 60% is recycled, 40% is thrown away. And this 40% that is thrown away is incinerated. And actually, it's interesting, right? When I look into why it's incinerated first, we may think, oh, is it to generate heat for energy production? Yes, partly. Some of our energy, electricity in Singapore come from burning this rubbish. But actually, the more important reason is to reduce the bulk by 98%. So without burning the rubbish, Semakau Island would need to be 50 times bigger, right, to deal with the amount of rubbish. So by burning, we reduce the bulk, the volume of the rubbish by 98%. But despite doing that, as I said earlier, Semakau is filling up very, very fast. Okay, so this is the amount of solid waste in Asia, some of the countries, and we look, number one now is Japan, right? If you look at the current chart, Singapore is 1.49 kilogram per person per day compared to India, 0.34. But by 2025, which is a few years away, it looks like we are going to overtake Japan, right? So unfortunately, that Singapore is trending in the wrong direction, okay, for this. The other area I want to touch on, again, is a topic close to my heart, is food waste. I feel that, I do feel sad whenever I see food being thrown away. And what is the sort of figure, right, is 140 kilograms per person. So for the average, so-called average 70 kilogram, 2 times your body weight of food is thrown away every year. If you think about it, I think it's quite shocking. That equates to 2 bowls of rice per day per person. And what is this 786 million kilograms, right, of waste of food that we are thrown away? It means filling up 1,000, the size of an Olympic swimming pool is huge, right? Imagine 1,500 of this, and each one of them filled with food that is thrown away every year in Singapore. All right, so food for thought, literally, yeah. What can we do as Buddhists, right? I think we know all the R's, right? Reflect, refuse, reduce, resource, reuse, refill, repurpose, repair, rehome, reown, and last should be recycle. Recycle should never be at the top, right? And yet when you ask people, oh, what can you do to reduce waste? Recycle, but actually there are many things that all these R's that comes before recycle, right? And these are just examples from around the world, from our plastic bottles, right? You can even make a boat, right? And make a house. And prior to COVID, there was this repair kopitiam, right? Because one of the problems in Singapore is that many of our electronic devices are actually very difficult to repair and expensive to repair. And unfortunately, often it's cheaper to buy new things than to repair. But there's a ground movement, right? For people set up repair clinics in different neighborhoods. And you could bring your fan, your table fan, your rice cooker that's not working, and they try to repair it for you, try to give it a few more years. But of course, with COVID, I think this has stopped, but one of the things to look forward to once life returns a little bit more towards normal, right? From COVID-19. I think reflect, right, is probably the most important. It's so important that we reflect on our diet, on our lifestyle, reflect on our needs and wants. And as I said before, can we lead simpler lives, right? Can we consume less? Can we generate less waste? Can we have smaller carbon footprints? Okay, the answer is yes, right? And another topic close to my heart, reflection on our diet, right? And it's very clear, the science says it, right? Our carbon footprint is lower by eating further down the food chain. What do you mean by further down the food chain? Meaning eating plants. A plant-based diet is definitely healthier and also better for the environment, right? Agriculture are a major source of pollution and deforestation, right? If you look at the news, right, periodically there have been news about what's happening in Brazil, right? So much about the Amazon forest, like the largest rainforest, one of the oldest rainforests, so much of it is being cut down. And then you have to ask, why is it so much cut down? Is it for the growing population in Brazil? Actually, not really. Brazil is huge, and they have enough land for the population. Actually, most of this forest that is being cut down is to plant soya beans and other wheat, other grains. Why? Is it soya beans to feed humans? Not really, Most of it is to feed cows, right? Livestock, to create meat. So if you get shocked and you say, gosh, all these forests is being cut down, and yet you say, oh, nothing to do with me, as you enjoy your steak, right? And I think sometimes it's important for us to make that connect, that whenever you're eating beef especially, right, you are directly contributing towards the demand for land, for agriculture land, to grow food to feed animals so that we can eat them, right? And meat production is a major contribution to global warming. Estimated 10 to 15% of global warming comes from the production of meat. And something else I want everyone to reflect on, right, is that the grains that are grown, right, soya bean, wheat, rice, this food can either be used to feed people directly, and the majority of poor people in the world, they depend on eating this food. They don't eat a lot of meat, right? But right now, there's immense competition for the grain, the soya, the wheat, the rice from the meat industry, right? To purchase this to feed livestock for meat production. And what this means is that the cost of grains have gone up many times over in the world. And it's actually harder for the poorer communities to feed themselves because we are competing with them. In order for us to enjoy meat, we need to have all these cows and all that consume a lot of these grains. So actually, a lot of interesting studies have been done to show how meat consumption means that the poor people in the world are going poorer and hungrier. It's a very sobering thought, right? Then when we talk about recycle, it's a final option before disposal as waste, right? But as I say, often it's the only option considered. But I think it's also worth reflecting that recycling also consumes energy and water, but usually less than production of fresh material. And some things recycle well, but the truth is that if we do all the other R's before, right, there'll be very little left for recycling, right? So just a few points about waste again. Many items and materials are not recyclable or cost-effective to recycle. Even in Singapore, right, we like to think, oh, we put the plastic, the paper into the blue bin, but actually a lot of what goes into the blue bin, right, recycling does not get recycled, often for the simple reason that there is contamination. All you need is one person to throw a dirty plastic container that's been used to contain food, right? Imagine if there's curry, sauce, and all that, and that contaminates the rest of the clean plastic in the blue bin. And it means the entire content of the blue bin cannot be recycled. So even though we think, oh, we are doing our part, but a lot of the time, because of contamination, cannot happen. Then some things like rubber, certain plastic, fabric, and clothes are not easy to recycle. And sometimes it's not cost effective. And things that are made from many different materials like Tetra Pak, shoes, just not easy to recycle. And this chart just shows the amount of waste statistics, the recycling rate. So actually for paper, cardboard is not bad, 51%. But actually, you look at it, a lot of the things that are well recycled are the metal, ferrous metal, non-ferrous metal, things that have a lot of value in them, right? And things like some of the things like ceramic, rubber, only 2% because these are hard to recycle. Okay, now I want to go back to food again, right? Just the recycling was a bit of a distraction, but I think this chart clearly shows also the impact, what we choose to eat, right? And what we eat a lot actually directly contributes to the amount of CO2 production. And I keep talking about beef, right? But unfortunately, beef is the biggest culprit, right? So the more beef that you eat, right, really you're really contributing a lot to CO2 and climate change. And then things further down the chart, right, you can see vegetable, plants, the carbon footprint is much lower. So there's no doubt about it. If you can eat further down the food chain, it's better for the environment. Then another chart just showing the same thing again, right? And then this chart just says that even in places like America, right, the US, we think that they're big meat eaters, but even then there's a trend for them to be eating less meat, partly for health reasons, but also the environmental awareness is pretty high in the West, I have to say. Most European countries, right, have like anything between 8 to 15% of the population who are vegetarians or vegans. Singapore, I don't know, 1%, 2%, probably even less than that, right? Because the awareness is, I think, lacking here about animal welfare, health, and the environment benefit of adopting a plant-based diet. Then this is one of my last slides today. It's about what can we actually do day to day. These are just some pointers, okay? I think when it comes to electricity and water usage, right? I think things like, a lot of equipment, our computers and all that, I think if we can avoid leaving it on standby, especially computers, right? And for those of us who work in the offices still, when we leave the office every day, can we turn it off and then turn it on the next day rather than leave the computers on? Because the computers are on, they're on standby, they continue to consume electricity. And for what benefit? It's so that the next morning we save 1 minute, 2 minutes, not having to wait for the computer to reboot again. Right? So if you think about it, look at the thousands of computers in Singapore at home, in the offices, little things like that, right? Can we do our part at home? Turn it off and then turn it on at the main switch, not just using the remote and turning it off. Because when you use the remote and turn off, it's in standby. And when the equipment is on standby, it continues to consume electricity. That's why it can be on standby. And when you press the remote control, it turns on again, right? So something to think about, something that we can all do immediately. I mentioned aircon temperature. Do we need the temperature to be 18 degrees at night? Is it so that we can enjoy the thick, fluffy duvet and we can wear our cardigans? Do we really need to sleep at 18 degrees? Would 24, 25, 26 degrees not be okay? Right? It's just cool enough so that you don't sweat, right? I'm not suggesting we all give up on the aircon. Sometimes it gets really hot. But on nights when you had rain and all that, yeah, leave the windows open, leave the fan on, right? The amount of electricity usage is a fraction having the fan on rather than the aircon, right? Then, this is something I think can be quite impactful. Many of us don't have the privilege of owning the roofs over our head, right? Some of us, yeah, if you've got a landed property, you've got a penthouse, you own the roof, by all means, solar panels, and we should be doing that, right? If you have that privilege. But for everyone else, the energy market has been opened up. We now have a choice. And I would urge all of us to look at those companies that are able to provide green electricity, right? Either solar or through carbon offset strategies, because this is our way of funding this technology, funding the adoption of non-fossil fuel source of electricity, renewables, right? So something that I would urge all of us to consider. You may end up paying a little bit more. They are unlikely to be the cheapest, but this is where we can directly contribute. We make a monetary contribution to the development of the green energy industry. Okay, so a challenge for all of you. And then if you're going to renovate your toilet or what, it's time to change, like can we have energy or water efficient, right? The taps and all that, so that the water efficient ones, it mixes with air so that you don't really feel that you're getting less water. And then the sort of toilets in the HDB where you get to use the water first round to wash your hands before the water is used to flush the toilet. If you think about it, do you need to use the same water, that is of the quality that is good enough to drink, right? Tap water, right? Do we need water that is good enough to drink to flush our toilet? The answer is no. Wouldn't it be better if you use that water once first, wash our hands or whatever, and then that water that is slightly dirty to flush our toilets? These sort of toilets are available, right? Then mobile phones, right? We all have mobile phones. You might think, how much energy can the mobile phone use, right? But how often do you charge the mobile phone? Every day, right? Twice a day? And how many millions of mobile phones are there? How many billions of mobile phones are there around the world? It all adds up, right? Can we lower the energy consumption so that we charge less? How about using it in low power mode, right? Then when we are asleep at night, turn the phone off, right? Or put airplane mode. Because what you may not be aware that if you leave the mobile phone on, right? And where do you tend to leave the mobile phone when you're asleep? Right next to you, right? Maybe a little table next to you, but you're like barely less than a foot away. And all this emission, the radiation from the mobile phone, we don't really know the long-term effect, right? But already some scientific papers suggest that it may not be a good idea to have the mobile phone so close to your brain all the time. So most of the time during the day, you have the mobile phone in your pocket, trousers pocket, maybe in a handbag. So it's away from your brain. But that 6 to 8 hours that you're asleep every night, imagine that mobile phone is next to you and you have it on rather than in airplane mode or turn off. You're absorbing a lot of radiation. I'm not saying that will need to lead to something bad. We still don't know, but because that's unknown. So something to consider as well in terms of your health. Bluetooth, do we need to have the mobile phone Bluetooth on all the time? Again, that consumes electricity. And then mobile phone again, do we really need to change our mobile phone every year, right? Or even every 2 years? Can we not change the battery? When the battery is, you have to charge 3 times a day. Yes, probably not unreasonable to change the battery. How can we generate less waste? And things like disposable cups, plates, I think we should definitely say no. But then if we have to tapao, right, we have to take away nowadays. What do? Things like bottled water, we bring our own container, right? So that we don't have packaging. Food itself, as I've said, we shouldn't waste the food. And then if really some of the food you need to throw away, for example, like vegetable fruit peeling or the parts of the vegetable that you can't eat, can we look into composting? Either we compost at home, and I think there are also neighborhood composting centers now, where I think I read somewhere, but I think certain neighborhoods they have center where you can bring your green waste, your vegetable and fruit waste, and they will compost for you, or they will use it to cultivate the black social fly, right? And then they will use that for other purposes, animal feeds and all that. Transportation, public transportation, can we adopt more of it? And of course, if you own a car or planning to buy a car, change a car, can we support the electric transport revolution by making our next car minimum a hybrid, right? Or a full electric model? Because we are consumers, right? We drive the demand, right? If there's no demand, the manufacturer will be slow to adopt also, right? And also, I think we can be very powerful as a consumer. The more we can show that as a community, we are for this green agenda, the easier it will be for the government to push the green agenda. If they sense that the people of Singapore are not ready, the Singapore government is always worried, right? If we come up with something that's not popular, how to win the next election and all that, so there are political considerations. So if we as a people can show that actually we are ready to go green, and we show the government that you don't have to tell us to go green, we are already going green, then the government can push ahead with all the green policies. Okay, we own, things that we have. There's this great website, Free Cycle, right? Or Trash Nothing, where you got things to give away, things that you don't mind accepting, secondhand things. Do look on it, right? Yeah. Then okay, nearly done already. So last 2 more slides. And okay, what's happening on the 1st of November? COP26, right? It's a major event that's happening in Glasgow, right? Where all the countries in the world, they're going to come together to discuss the plan on how we can reduce the impact of to reduce climate change, right? So something to look out for. Do listen to the news about all the different countries that's going to announce their plans. Singapore government has already announced its plans, and I think with every coming year, the government needs to be more and more ambitious. Okay, I just like to end by talking about filial piety. Why am I talking about filial piety? Yeah, right. Let me read this out loud. All of us would love and greatly cherish our mother, right? We each owe our very existence to our mother. For everything that she has ever provided for us is precious and priceless. We can never repay the debt we owe to our mother, nor would she seek that we repay her. Her only wish would be that we would always remain happy and healthy. She would love to see us live our life with love, compassion, gratitude, and humility. Her hope would be that we live a life of moderation with little greed, anger, and ignorance. She will be very touched and contented if we show her love, kindness, and respect. So that's for our mother. But what about the even bigger mother that we have, right? Would it not then seem right that we should look after Mother Earth as we look after our own mother? Because everything that we have, everything that we enjoy today, that came from Earth, Mother Earth, right? So good planets are hard to find. Let's look after this one. Let us all adopt a sustainable lifestyle, and it'll be a great way to practice the Dhamma. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ho. That was really informative. We have a few questions for you. First one is following fashion. Is following fashion and being well-dressed not in conformity with spiritual cultivation through a sustainable lifestyle?
I don't know. I would pose that question back. What do you think? I think the short answer is no, right? I mean, keeping up, in fact, fashion, the clothes industry is one of the biggest contributors to CO2 emission and pollution as well, because clothes cannot be recycled, right? So again, a lot of us have moved on to this buy and throw culture, right? Where we have more clothes than we can ever wear. And a lot of us throw away clothes that are unworn, right? Because we buy the spur of the moment, because it's cheap, it's on sale. So I would say definitely being fashionable, trying to keep up with fashion, no, it's definitely not great for the not part of sustainable lifestyle lah. So, but of course, I do agree that when we interact with other people, we should dress respectably. You know, it doesn't have to be expensive or fashionable clothes, but we should maintain. No, it's not about coming to Buddhist fellowship in our tacky clothes, right? And I think because we want to show respect to one another and just keep it simple but smart at the same time.
Thank you. Can having fewer meals a day, for example, 2 meals instead of 3 to 5 meals a day, contribute to sustainable living?
Well, definitely. I suppose if there's one way to not to overeat, but actually more importantly, it's probably better for our health as well to eat fewer times a day, rather than to eat more times. In fact, so like for the monastic, right, the Theravada tradition, they eat one main meal a day. That actually has a lot of health benefit because it means that we have 1 period or 2 period where there's plenty of calories going in, but then in between we go for long hours where there's no calories going in, and it's good for our body's mechanism of managing sugar and all that, and the insulin cycle and all that. So actually it's been shown, right? If you can have this intermittent fasting, right? Meaning you eat everything you want in that, is it 8 hours period or 6-hour period, and then the other remaining 18 hours, right? You have nothing to eat. That is a good way to lose weight and maintain health. So not only is it sustainable, but it's probably healthy as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ho. If we are not vegetarian, but want to live sustainably and only buy meat from sustainable sources, what is a good source?
I'm probably not the best person to ask since I'm vegetarian. I don't eat meat, so I don't really know where, but possible. I think generally the sustainable sources you may be referring to more like the organic, free range, or this, yeah, there are specialist suppliers in Singapore, right? So I suppose if you're not ready to give up meat, but you want your care for the environment, you care for animal welfare, right? Then yeah, I suppose that's not necessarily a bad step lah. But perhaps something to consider. I think you don't have to be vegetarian. You know, you can just choose to eat less meat lah, right? So again, it's eating less rather than to give up completely if you're not ready to do so. So something worth considering.
Thank you, Dr. Ho. One question was trying to live to buy meat or fish from sustainable sources. It's very expensive in Singapore. So yeah, so people will look for cheaper sources. So, I guess
Suppose maybe eat less lah. Eat less, then you buy quality rather than buy quantity, right?
yes, I guess. Last couple of questions. We are in a, this is a long one. We are in a digital age, heavily dependent on technology. This depletes our natural resources. This problem has been made worse by the pandemic as everyone goes digital globally. Pollution has also increased as more technological waste is produced. There doesn't seem to be a way out of this mess as the world becomes more reliant on technology. Can you comment, please?
Yeah, that is a good question. quite a profound question and actually multiple questions in it, right? And I'll say that there's a lot of truth in that question. It's a statement and also a question, right? That we have all gone digital. Actually, it's very interesting if you look at the impact of us going digital, right? Do you know that each time you send a WhatsApp message, each time you send an email, there's a carbon footprint because energy is needed to transmit this signal to whoever is receiving it. So actually, people have started doing research into it to look at the carbon footprint of our digital lifestyle. And actually, there is a movement now calling for all of us to actually try to refrain and cut back on all this, especially on WhatsApp, right? We just mass WhatsApp everyone. We see an interesting video, we mass send it to everyone. Then each time somebody download that video, again, there's a carbon footprint from us sending and from people downloading. So actually, there's rising awareness that our digital lifestyle is also in some ways increasing our CO2 emissions. So I think, yes, it's something that we need to manage. And I think like anything else, technology, right? Digital technology is there. It's up to us it's up to us to think of ways to put it to good use that benefit mankind rather than harm mankind. So it's also through digital technology, we have improved efficiency. For example, like transportation, logistics and all that, so in some ways there has been less wastage in our food, supply chain has improved due to technology. So I think technology, yes, whilst it consumes energy and all that, and in many ways is damaging, but it can also be a force for good. But I think it would be very controversial, right, to suggest that we return to the pre-digital age, right, and stop using all these mobile phones and computers. I think you cannot go back. Yeah, you cannot go back. The time without electricity, you cannot go back. So we have it, we are stuck with it, but it's just how we wisely use it. We generate our intellectual capability towards innovation that reduces energy consumption to help mankind, to help the world. So I don't think necessarily digital technology or this is a bad thing. It's how we use it, as with anything else in the world.
Thank you, Dr. He. Change less often, like you said, mobile phones. How can people reduce food waste at home and in restaurants?
I think at home is easier, right? You have control. If you do the cooking, then you should know how much each family member eats. If it's a helper doing the cooking, and then you have to train your helper to cook the right amount. But the truth is that it's okay to overcook a little, but not to, some people, they say pantang, right? Or they refuse to have leftovers. They say, oh, leftover food is bad for you. I don't think there's a lot of truth there. Perhaps nutritionally it's less, but if you store it properly in the fridge, you heat it up away, the chances of food poisoning is negligible. So it's okay to overcook because we don't like to have not enough food, right? Although probably it's good for us to eat until we're 80% full, right? I mean, some studies have shown, but it's okay to, but I think what we can do is to make a conscious choice, right? Towards the end of the dinner, right? Then you say, oh dear, there's going to be leftover food. What are the food that keeps better? And interestingly, it's probably meat. Meat you can reheat, but vegetable, by the time you reheat vegetable, not so nice already, right? I mean, so maybe then make it a priority to finish off the vegetable. So maybe that's one way for you to eat more vegetable, always making sure the vegetable is finished off on the same day, and then keep the meat, fish as leftover. For restaurant, I think there's also a big awareness, right? All those restaurants doing buffet and all that. So I suppose one good thing about COVID is that buffets have disappeared, right? Well, I mean, not fully, but the sort of self-service buffet, then you take a lot, then you left it at the table. Now there's buffet has come back, but somebody serve you. So I suppose most of us, maybe we are a bit embarrassed to ask for, because somebody is serving us, right? So now in the restaurants, perhaps we're a bit shy to ask for too much, and then we ask for enough to go back a second round, third round. So I think the sensible thing is we take what we can eat, we order the right amount, and like at home, extra food in the restaurant, we just ask for the doggy bag, we tapao, right? We do not waste, right? Because we have spent so much money on it. Somebody has worked really hard to cook the food. The farmers have put in a lot of energy to grow the food and all that for us. The animal has died to give us the meat. Let's not waste. So I don't think it matters whether we eat out or not. Eat What cannot be eaten as leftovers, we finish it. What can be kept as leftovers, we eat it as leftovers.
Thank you, Dr. Ho. The last question I have here is, very few people bother to recycle, know what products can be recycled, or make sure containers are cleaned before recycling. How can we improve?
I think we start with ourselves first, right? If we think that generally the knowledge is poor, we make sure that every one of us, we do our research. All the information is available. NEA website, you just need to Google. If every one of us today in the audience can become an environment protection officer, right? And we start to equip ourselves with the knowledge so that each time somebody doesn't know, our family doesn't know, our friends doesn't know, we tell them, hey, this one can recycle, that one can recycle. So I think the start got to come from us. And that's why I'm sharing on this topic, because we start small. If just the group of us who are listening today, if we be the agent of change, the agent of knowledge, and we share with one other person, and then that this person share with one other person, that's how the movement can grow. So I strongly believe that, beyond this question of recycling, right, is like, can the Buddhist community, right, can we be one of the flag bearers for this environmental protection? Can we show that because we are Buddhists, we are pushing for it, and it's part of what we do, it's part of our Dhamma practice. And let us equip ourselves with the knowledge, and we lead by example. Nobody likes you to go and nag and say, do this, and you yourself not doing it. So you do it, people observe, and then they ask you, hey, why are you doing this? Then you can tell them. That's what we Buddhists do, right? We are not the preachy type, right? We don't go and evangelize, but we lead by example. But then when people ask us, we must make sure the knowledge is there so that we can evangelize them and share the good news about environmental protection.
Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
We will now invite all the sentient beings to participate in our acquired merits for cultivating the wholesome thoughts, wholesome speech, and wholesome actions this morning. Let us now chant together. Etawata cha amhehi sambatang punya sampadang Sabbe dewa anumodantu Sabba sampati siddhya Etawata ca amhehi Sambatang punya sampadang Sabbe buddha anumodantu Sabba sampati siddhya Etawata ca amhehi Sambatang punya sampadang Sabbe satta anumodantu Sabba sampati siddhya. The dedication of merits to our departed relatives, let us chant together. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ho, for the very informative and insightful talk. Next week, we have Ajahn Hasapanya from Dhammasara Nuns Monastery, who will be giving us a talk on the topic Buddha's gradual training. Do not miss this talk. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.